Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Let's start by getting logged into Clever. Remember, that's a space where you can find all of the links for any of the apps that you might be using. All right, so let's start with this, kind of just as a little icebreaker morning warm up. What is your full name, and why were you named this? Or does some part of your name have a special meaning, or is there a story behind why you're named the way you are? So my story, my parents didn't have a name for me when they went in there. They had some ideas, but they couldn't come up with something. And as they were wheeling my mom out of the hospital, they were like, "You really need to give your kid a name before you leave here." And so they came up with my name, Aubrey. I'm interested to read what yours were. Thanks for sharing. So this is lesson 28 of week 15. We are really, really getting through things. We have this week, next week, and then the 2 weeks after our winter break till the end of the semester. Lots going to happen between now and then, so I hope that you are ready to get going. So some reminders, your grades are cumulative. So the last week when grades were posted, if you weren't happy with where things were, there is plenty of ways that you can keep bringing your grade up. You can turn in missing or late work. There are multiple bonus opportunities. Go back and complete Edpuzzles that you didn't do the first time. There's all kinds of things that you can do. I encourage you to continue pushing forward and trying to bring those grades up. Check your Google Classroom and Edpuzzle for returns or questions or comments or just final grades. Because sometimes you think you've done something and you turn it in, but you haven't, and I return it to you. And that's so that I can make sure that you turn in your work. Remember our expectations that we are trying to follow at all times during the school day. Thank you guys for being here. I know it's hard to get into the live lessons sometimes, but you're here now doing the work, and I'm very grateful of that. So this week, the big thing we're doing is this new element TCT. And all a TCT is just kind of an analysis and writing assignment. So there are 4 total assignments. Hopefully you've already done the preview video for the week that was posted on Monday. You have 2 assignments that are going with the work that we do today. Our lesson on Thursday or Friday is going to be about revising and improving and working on that TCT. And then we'll finish with a reflection over the work that you did this week. So again, remember the pattern. Please, don't try. I hope that you haven't tried to do number 66 or 67 without watching this, because I'm literally going to give you some answers. But so always remember that you need to make sure you're either in the live lesson or watch the Edpuzzle recorded version before you try to do any of the assignments as the weeks go. Having a periodic table is a good idea, so you can open up one now. All right, and let's start with this. Another one of these. Where am I if I have 1 valence electron and 7 electron shells? So our answer, if it has 1 valence electron, that means it has to be in this first column. Remember, the columns tell us the number of valence electrons. Don't count these crazies. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, so it's in the first column, and then it has 7 electron shells. That has to do with the rows. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. First column, correct answer is francium, FR number 87. Try another one. 5 valence electrons and 3 shells. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we're going down to the third row. This is the first row, second row, third row. 15 phosphorus. Good work. All right, so we are going to be walking through how to do this new element TCT. What you're going to be doing is making a claim about something based on the evidence and analysis that we do in this prep work assignment. What I'd like you guys to start by doing is opening up this new TCT element document and making some observations. What do you see? And you're going to answer these next 2 questions. So observe. What did you notice or see while you were looking or observe while you were looking at this TCT assignment? Great. So some things you noticed is that we're looking at a new element. We're looking at the periodic table. You might have seen that there are properties. You might have seen the word trend. You might have seen claim and evidence and reasoning. Great. So based off of all that, and again, looking at that document, if you want to go back, what exactly do you think you're going to be doing? So don't you worry. I'm going to tell you what you're going to be doing. So this is all like made up. This isn't real, but the idea of how to do this is very much real. So the task is this. While looking for new particles like the Higgs boson, a new element has been created in the Large Hadron Collider in CERN, Switzerland. You are on the task force to determine where this new element should be placed on the periodic table using its known properties. The International Union of Pure and Applied Chemistry will be deciding the name of the new element after validating the evidence for its existence. So you are going to be choosing where on the periodic table this brand new element should go based on a set of properties. So the first thing is that you need to analyze those properties, and how you're going to do that is in a self-paced Pear Deck that I've created for you. We're going to practice what that looks like here. It's titled number 66, a new element TCT prep work. You have to complete each of the Pear Deck slides to get credit for this. And this is super important you have to do this first to be able to know where to put your element. So there are 10 properties, one of which we're going to look together at right now. But there are 10 properties and 10 trends that you're going to be analyzing. Based on those properties and the trends of the periodic table, it's going to give you a clue where this new element should go. And these 10 properties will then provide as your evidence when you make a claim about where the element should go. So your task is going to be to go through each piece of evidence. You're going to analyze the evidence. You're going to analyze the trend it is associated with, and then use that property and that trend to make a determination about where the element will go based on that piece of evidence. And you're literally going to draw a circle or an arrow or a highlight of that area. The goal then, after looking at these 10 properties, is to know exactly which column and row this element will be placed in. Now, it's important for me to say the new element will not be placed where an element already is. So it's not like, oh, it's going to go where francium is. No, we're making a whole new area for this element based on its properties, okay? So some recommendations. So I recommend using the highlighter tool when circling. So making sure if you use on Pear Deck the marker, it's like dark and you can't see through it, and then you don't know what you're looking at. So using the highlighter tool. It also might be productive to use the tools to signify how the property shows where the element can't go. So like, for example, if one of the properties is that the element is very metallic, then you should cross out that top corner where the nonmetals are, because it can't go there because those are nonmetals. If our element is really metallic, can't go there. All right. And then again, when you go to write the TCT, this analysis of the properties is going to be your evidence for the actual writing part. Okay. So let's do an example together. First of all, take a look. Here is a periodic table with all of the masses of the elements included on here. So what is the basic trend with mass? So your answer should say something like, as you go from left to right, the mass does this. As you go from bottom to top, the mass does this, or top to bottom, either way. But what is the trend with mass? So what we should notice is that as you go down the columns of the periodic table, any column that you want to look at, the pattern is the mass is increasing. So the mass is increasing as you go down the periodic table. As you go across from left to right, the mass is also increasing. Now, there's a couple of these that kind of maybe they're not increasing by that much, or maybe it's a slight decrease, but the general trend is that as you go from one side to the other towards the right, the mass is increasing. So what that suggests is that the biggest masses right now are in that bottom right-hand corner. Now, if I tell you that the mass number of our element is 304, what does that tell you about where the element is going to have to go? Now, when you're doing this on your Pear Deck, you're literally going to draw where it should go. We can't do it in the Edpuzzle. Maybe one day they'll let us, but describe to me where you would say that this new element might go. And it doesn't have to be one spot. It can be a region, but describe that to me now. Okay, so 304 is the mass of our element, and we notice if we look at all of the masses of the elements, the biggest one is this one over here, 294 Ogasen, I don't know, element number 18, Og. Its mass is 294. The mass of our element is 304, which is far heavier than this element here. So what that should suggest to us is that our element can't fit anywhere on here as is, because this is the biggest one we have. So what that means is that we're going to have to create a new row underneath this, underneath our row 7. Now, some of you guys might have been like, oh, well, I'll just put it right next to this and row or and make a new column. So if the pattern shows that if every time we get to the 8th column and then after that you go down and start a new row, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense that we would make a new atom in a new column. But adding on another row, that's what has literally happened every single time. So that suggests that we need to add a new row at the very bottom where our element might go. So when you are drawing this on the Pear Deck, on the blank slide that is with the blank periodic table, you literally could have highlighted or circled or put an arrow to this area down here, because that signifies if our mass is 304, that's the only place that this atom has to be found somewhere in this new row that we are creating. Okay. So that is one piece of evidence. That is one property and one trend. There are 9 others that you are going to be responsible going through. Remember, the big idea here is that bit by bit, you're getting a little more information that allows you to pinpoint exactly where this new element needs to be placed. Okay. So you may not know exactly after the first 2 or the first 5 or these first 6 or the first 8. But after all 10, it should be really, really clear, combining all of these clues to where this new element should be found. So the actual TCT writing piece starts with literally part 1 says do the prep work. So once you've done the Pear Deck prep slides, that's one of the big pieces here. Part 2 now is pretty straightforward. All you're going to do is you're going to give your claim for the placement of the new element using this sentence stem. So you will write in the green box, literally, this new element should be placed in row blank and column blank. So filling in those blanks here with that whole sentence starter. Don't just write down which column and row. Please make sure you use the whole sentence stem. So the next piece, this is what's going to take the most time and is probably the most important, because what you're going to be doing is you're going to be explaining how those properties and trends that you did in the Pear Deck, how that backs up where you decided the element should go. So remember, there were 10 total pieces of evidence. One of them we're going to look at together here. You have to choose 5 of the other 9 to look at. You don't have to look at all of them. You just have to choose 5 of those 9. If you do more than 5, you get extra credit. If you just do 5 and you do them right, you get full credit. So for each of the pieces of evidence, each of the properties, there's a sentence stem that you're going to use. So the mass number proves that this new element should be located blank because blank. So you're purely going to be explaining how that evidence tells you where the new element should be placed. So what I'd like you to do is use that sentence starter here and then show me what your reasoning would be based on what we just learned about how the mass being 304 tells us that it's got to be at the very bottom in a new row. Use a sentence starter to put your reasoning for how you put that all together. All right, so here's an example of an acceptable answer that I wrote, and if you put something like this, then you'd be good to go for your reasoning. So the mass number proves that the new element should be located in a new row at the bottom because it is heavier than anything on there. So because the mass is heavier than anything else, it's going to have to go in its own new column underneath the heaviest elements. That's it. So again, your task then is going to be to choose 5 of the other 9 properties and trends to use as your support for the claim that you made about where it should be found on the periodic table. The final piece of this is literally just rephrasing your claim statement as a conclusion using the sentence stem that I have right here. Easy peasy. So the next steps that I have for you, once you've viewed this lesson, you are free to get started on the Pear Deck number 66, where you are looking at the different properties, the 10 different properties of the element to determine exactly where it should be found. Once you've done that, then you can do number 67, which is the actual written assignment. So the good news is that those are really the two big things that you're doing this week. Our lesson on Thursday or Friday is going to be to provide some support, to get some time for some revisions, get some individual help on these so that they can be the best that they can be. So I'm curious, how are you feeling after this so far? Are you freaking out? Are you like, I got it? If you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about, how are you feeling after this explanation? All right. I will try to reach out if you're struggling, I promise. But like I said, the good news is that the lesson that we're having later in the week is going to really hopefully help you guys get some individual attention to make sure that your TCT is the best that it can be. So those two new assignments are posted. I do expect that you have started working on both of those before our lesson later in the week. And yeah, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask right now or on a private message or in an email. Otherwise, I will see you in our next lesson. Thanks, guys.